All right, welcome everybody. We'll give you a second to get settled in, get your snacks and a drink ready so that you can enjoy this presentation of Ready Set Solar Southern Ohio. This is our first time running a Ready Set Solar program here in the state of Ohio, and we're super glad that you decided to join us to watch. All right, so without further delay, let's go ahead and get started. So this is our Ready, Set, Solar, Southern Ohio info session. This is our pre-recorded session, so we're glad that you've decided to listen in. My name is Mariah Williams. I am currently the Ohio Program Associate. I am located in Columbus, Ohio, but n- hail originally from southeastern Ohio. I'm a little town called Clarington, has about I think 200 or so people now. But it's in Monroe County, so that is one of our 35 counties that we're covering for this program. So I'm super familiar with the southern end of the state and love that area. I'm glad to be getting to visit you guys more regularly here during this program. So these are some different solar installations from that region of the state. Some of these you may recognize as like the NAACP building in Dayton, Ohio, and other ones are just some of our individual people that have decided to go solar with us. So, what is Solar United Neighbors? We are a vendor neutral national nonprofit. We are vendor neutral because we don't care in the end who you use to get solar or what manufacturers or installers or anything like that. We're just there to support you, educate you, and offer you with good resources to make wise decisions on your own about if solar is a good fit for your property or not. We help people to go solar. We help them to join together and fight for their energy rights. That looks a little different from in each one of our areas. So it might be something like getting net metering policy in your local area or helping it so that HOA residents have an easier time to go solar. Even though, they own their homes, sometimes they had those ruling bodies that would tell them they couldn't. And we want to do those things so that there's just better energy policy as a whole for everyone within our state. So Sun got started back in 2007. Anya, who you see in the picture here, is our founder, and her son Walter came home from watching An Inconvenient Truth and said, Mom, let's go solar. And she was like, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do this. And then she figured out that it was much more complicated than just going solar. So there was red tape, there was, interconnection agreements and getting approvals and permits, and that it was way more expensive than she thought it would be. And she said, well, if we're figuring this all out for us, let's figure it out for our neighbors too. And so Walter and his friend Diego went door to door knocking and meeting all those neighbors. And in the end, 50 homes decided to go solar together in Mount Pleasant in DC. And whenever that happened, they started getting calls from other places going, wow, how did you do this? How did you make this program? And so Sun was born. We created programs and started moving them throughout the country. And speaking of that, we've had a national impact now since that original co-op. And our national impact has us working in 12 states plus DC and Puerto Rico. We also have helped 7,000 families to go solar on their rooftops or, on their properties as a whole. That's through more than 350 of our original solar co-op programs. And now we're starting to add in these Ready Set Solar programs, which you're going to learn more about today. Here in Ohio, we have helped 677 households to go solar, which is about a 5.1 megawatt installed capacity. That has helped to create about 126 solar jobs, and it has invested more than $13 million back into the local economy through those, small installers that are putting that onto those rooftops. Another reason we work on this is because the energy system is not fair and equitable as it stands right now. These are sites that unfortunately most of you are all too familiar with seeing. They're coal plants that have giant ash ponds next to them. They're fracking pads. In this case, this one is in Powhatan Point, Ohio. It was on Captina Creek, and it had an explosion a few years back, and that made a whole neighborhood have to evacuate for close to a week to protect those residents from that. And what we want to see instead is solar on industrial rooftops. In this case, this is like a chicken farm, I believe. Um, and then you might see it in somebody's field. Maybe this is an unusable space of their land where the either soil isn't fertile or it's closer to their farmhouse and they want to have animals grazing, and so they can put in, that beautiful little small ground mount array, or even on top of their roofs of their homes. And any of those ways, that system is fair and equitable. It is something that they're helping to get, a little bit of funding into their own properties with. It helps to pay for their power bills, and it doesn't just keep adding to the pollution that you're having to breathe in or get your water supply from, drive by and look at, what have you. So, another way that we help with solar policy and advocacy here is community solar is up in our state house, both in the House, that's House Bill 197, and the Senate, and that's Senate Bill 247. Those are both Republican bipartisan sponsored bills. So they've got, a good mix of legislators that are trying for these policies. And why we want community solar is that not every rooftop can support solar. Some people are renters, some people's home is too old, some people's space doesn't align properly to be able to catch solar well and be able to produce a proper amount of energy. And so we want community solar, which in some cases is these arrays somewhere like this, which is like a brown field. They can't be growing crops on there safely, so they've decided to put solar instead. It could be over a parking lot or on a church roof or an industrial warehouse roof. And then that energy is shared out to the community, so that people can save on their power bills about 20% by subscribing to the program. So now that you know a little bit about us, let's talk about what you're really here for. And that's what you wanted to learn about. So, first, we're going to talk about solar technology. Then, we're going to dive into some solar economics. And finally, we're going to wrap up with what exactly is Ready Set Solar. So, first up, how do solar panels work? So, solar, which is also known as solar photovoltaics, converts solar energy to electricity. And it does that with those solar panels that we all recognize. So, whenever you've got those solar panels together, that's what's called a solar array. But each one of those panels is made up of multiple layers. And the part that we all think about, the part that we all see whenever we look at it, is those solar cells. But those are not something that we want to expose to weather. So they get encapsulated and layered in between things like glass and an aluminum frame, so that that is protected from the weather. And that way, whenever they warranty them for 20 to 25 years, you know that they're actually going to wear that long. It's just like a window. It's the same type of materials, except for there's that solar cell trapped in between those layers. And then one of the components that we don't all think about is the racking. And in this case, this is racking that you're seeing being installed on a shingle roof. So in this case, they're going to penetrate through the roof, and then they're going to use a special sealant to make sure that those holes don't create any type of weather, intrusion into the roof. The same type of racking is used on slate roofs. So if you do have a slate roof, or the standard shingle roof, either one, those are perfectly acceptable surfaces that they can install the racking on. And racking is just there to help hold those solar panels into place. If you didn't have that, obviously the panel's just going to slip right off, or you'd have something that didn't hold up to weather. All of the racking is made to hold up to, I think it's like EF1, force winds for your tornadoes. It lasts through hurricanes down in Florida whenever, people have systems down there. So this is really made to stay in place. It'll take, you know, hail of a pretty decent size bouncing off of it, and those panels still wear beautifully. So all of this is just to say that you don't have to worry too much about the weather. If you're getting up high enough to take your panels off your roof, you're probably going to have other roof damage or have your roof taken off altogether. And so that would be a completely different set of concerns. So don't worry about your racking. It's there even if you can't see it. If you do have an alternative roof, like maybe you have one of these standing seam metal roofs, there are little clamps that they use with that so they're not penetrating the surface. It clamps on and holds on through all those types of weather just the same way. And if you have a flat roof, they might do something called ballasted installation for your racking. And that is basically that they have those same little racks underneath there. The panels are more efficient if they have a slight angle, hopefully facing south. And so what they'll do is they'll put those little risers underneath there and then they hold those down using the weights. This does have an additional cost to it because you have to have a certain type of engineering schematic drawn up to make sure that your roof is capable of taking that additional weight of not only those panels but also those ballasts. But that is something that will be included whenever they're doing your proposal, and they'll let you know all of that in advance. And then a non-roof mounted system would be called a ground mount system. And these are really great if you have additional space. If your roof is not oriented well, maybe you're underneath a lot of shade trees, or maybe you're just trying to build an additional structure for some shading out in your yard. And then you could go with a ground mount. There are a couple things to keep in mind with this. There's a few additional costs. Number one, you don't have that existing surface like a roof. You've got to build out that ground mount structure. So in that case, there's that little bit of cost for those materials. And then because they're not attached to your home and they're not attached to your existing energy grid, you're going to have trenching costs, and that line run from the panels to wherever your electric panel is, your energy system is, so that you can actually utilize the power coming off of there. Um, so you're probably wondering, and since I've been mentioning it, what is a good location for solar? How do you know that you've got like that great placement? Should you be looking at your roof or should you be looking at a field or what should you be doing with it? So those are great questions. Number one, whenever you sign up for a program like Ready Set Solar, we're automatically going to offer you a free roof review. And if you are wanting it placed somewhere else in your yard, you can let us know that too. Whenever you're doing that registration or whenever we contact you to let you know if your roof was approved or not. And that's just to show you that you do have, no shading, that you've got a good orientation, but it lets you know what we're looking for and what we saw whenever we looked at it. But your orientation here in Ohio, you don't want just a north facing roof, or a north facing surface as a whole. Because we're so far north, you're not going to get maximum exposure and maximum solar production. South is your absolute best, and then east and west also work really well. So those are your good roof orientations. You want little to no shading for obvious reasons. We love trees. They're great. They sequester carbon all day, every day. We need clean air, but they do pose a problem to going solar. If you've got those big gorgeous trees, please leave those big gorgeous trees. But we'll help you figure out somewhere else maybe that solar would work on your property. You want enough space to mount panels. In most cases, this isn't a problem at all. For a small system, you can be looking at a small enough space, that it's like 250 square feet. You just want to be able to put those panels on your roof. If you do have a really weird shaped roof, you live in a castle or you've got, dozens of dormers and it looks like Dr. Seuss drew the plans for your house, it might pose a space problem, but we're going to let you know that. And again, there's some other spaces that you might be able to place it, like in a yard or a carport or something of this nature. And then you want a newer, undamaged roof if you are going with your roof surface. And the reason for that is that you want that roof to have the same lifespan as those solar panels. Your solar panels are going to last 20 to 25 years, and you don't want to have to pay to have them put up there to start with, pay to have them taken down, pay to have them stored, pay to have them put back up. You want to have one time of that money in use. So you want those panels to go up there and be able to stay up there and not need to come back off for the roof to be checked on or fixed. So, those are your four basics, though, on figuring out a good location for your solar. Then some of the system components that people know a little less about are the things that we either haven't seen before or that we don't see on a daily basis. Panels on your roof, panels in your yard, you're seeing them all the time. Everybody knows about those. But then we get into something like an inverter, and people are like, what is that? So that power coming off of your roof is in DC, direct current. And then whenever you're using it in your house, you're probably aware of this, it's AC, alternating current. And so you need something that inverts, changes that power from DC to AC. And that can happen in a couple different ways. So you might have string inverters. These are about the size of like a small printer that you might have at home, but they're mounted on the wall next to where your energy system enters your home, so probably by your electric panel, and that will convert all of the power all at once. So whenever the panels are working up there on your roof, they'll send all that DC energy down. It'll go through this one box and then send it back to your panel to be used, and it's doing it all at once. The other way that it sometimes happens is microinverters, and these are tiny little ones that sit on the back of each individual panel, and then they convert the energy right there on the rooftop from DC coming out of that panel into AC to send it to your electric panel in your house. And the big thing here is to remember that you don't need to know which one's right for you. That's what the installer's job is. They're going to talk to you about what they plan to use and why. And there's different reasons that you might want different parts of this. Like in my system, they decided that microinverters weren't best for my house. We went with string inverters with the DC optimizers so that where we had a little bit of shading on one corner for part of the day, we were still able to utilize that corner and it optimized that load coming off of the surrounding panels to help balance it out and then send it all to the inverters at once. Where microinverters would have just shut down and not used any part of that panel during that time period, and it didn't make as much sense. But they walked me through all of that. I didn't have to know any of that ahead of time, which was really great because I didn't know any of that ahead of time. So this is all new to me once as well. One of the pieces that we've been talking about that you probably are already super familiar with is your electric panel. So whenever your power comes in, it has to have a way, just like the power from the grid does, to get to all those things that you want it to power in your home. If you've got a panel that looks like this has got plenty of spaces, as you can see, where they could punch out those little metal rectangles, put in another switch, and be able to use something else in your house. So if you've got those spaces, great, you're good to go. If your panel's getting pretty full, if all your spaces are in use, or you've got some really giant loads, multiple, different things like a welder or, a second dryer or something like this that are taking up extra ones of those branches of your power, then you probably are running out of space and you might need an electric upgrade. Or if you've got one of those really old panels, don't tell us about it, that's not making code anymore. Maybe it's one of those ones with the twist in fuses, even, or, push button style fuses. You might be looking at needing to, upgrade just for A, safety purposes, and B, to make sure that all those components can play well together. But they will have you either take a picture of your panel or they will come and look at your panel depending on what you're comfortable with, and where you want people at in your house and stuff. But they will make sure that you're all set up with this. Either it'll be an included cost or it'll be something that they don't have to talk to you about because you've got one of these nice modern panels already. So, some important terminology to keep track of is kilowatts, which is what your system is measured in. That is a unit of power for whatever's being distributed or used in any one given moment. Kilowatt hours is the amount of production over the course of a period of time. And the way I like to remember these is kilowatt hours are like a garden hose, and or kilowatts are like a garden hose, and then kilowatt hours are what you're trying to fill up with that garden hose. So if you're trying to fill, let's say, a kiddie pool in the backyard, a small system, like a 5 kilowatt system, would work perfectly well because you're only filling up a small thing. But if you're trying to fill up a giant thing, like an Olympic sized swimming pool, or you want to fill up that kiddie pool really super fast, then you're going to need a larger system to produce that amount of kilowatt hours, that larger goal over the course of a day or over the course of an hour, to be able to use it. So that way you can, have a reference point for what you're looking at with kilowatts and kilowatt hours. The other way that you're probably seeing kilowatt hours is on your power bill, because that's how they measure how much you've used over the course of a month. So the average system size, in our metro areas is usually 6 to 7. Once we get out a little bit and people are using a little bit more power for, around their property, we're looking at, 8 to 10, based on your site and goals and your what you're wanting to cover. Maybe you want to budget for a certain amount, or maybe you want to cover 100% of your consumption. You'll be changing out that size. So here in this picture, you can see some little panels, standing next to a gentleman. He is about 6 feet tall. And so you can see that he's just a little taller than those panels, which measure approximately 3 by 5 feet. And this is a 4.2 kilowatt solar array. So it's a bit on the small size for our averages, but it gives you, a perspective to look at what that would be compared to, somebody that you might see standing next to that array. So here in Ohio, we have something called net metering. Net metering is a way for you to be able to earn back a fair rate off of the excess power that your solar is generating. So whenever you've got that solar on your rooftop, it's up there producing. And like right now, if you're watching this at, let's say, noon, your panels are going to be in high production time. They're going to be making solar energy, and it was likely to exceed what you can use in your house at that given moment. And whenever you've got the excess production rather than waste it, what's going to happen is that it will push out to the grid. And whenever that happens, the full expectation people have, and what does happen here in Ohio, is that the power company is going to take that excess energy, use it somewhere else, and give you a credit for it. In our case, they give you a 1-to-1 credit on that generation. So that doesn't include the distribution, that doesn't include the transmission, but it does include, all of the generation. So whenever you go into an evening time period or a stormy day time period, you're going to have some credits, hopefully setting ahead, that you can use for those, moments so that your bill will balance out. And here's what it means that your electric bill ends up looking like. So in this case, in this bill from July of last year, you can see that the person in this case, it looks like their June bill, they had a credit rolling ahead of $26.66. That means that somewhere prior to July, in their year, they were producing so much excess energy that they had that bill credit. Then you can see down here that they used some energy in July, obviously, and that shows that they ended up with a generation credit of $21.49. They still had that distribution cost, which is between your substation and your house. The movement on those wires causes wear and tear. They need to be able to get that distribution of that power paid for, and that usage paid for. So where it's moving and putting wear and tear, this is what they figure up as your portion of that cost. Then there's a customer charge. In this case, most of that is transmission. So that's from where the power is generated at, to those substations. And that's a fixed rate in most of our electric suppliers here in the state. That balances out to out of that original $21.49 credit. By the time you have that $13.77, subtracted off of there, that you end up with a $7.72 credit rolling ahead, and adding on to that $26.66 credit. So you have a total balance at the end of July of negative $34.38. So this person in this case will be carrying forward $34 toward their August bill. And if you wanted to look at it in a slightly different way, down at the bottom, you can see how it shows the energy they're using. So there's those kilowatt hour words that we talked about earlier. So this person used from the grid 705 kilowatt hours that were delivered. That's that DLVD. And then they pushed out to the grid 897 of their excess energies. And that RCVD is where that energy was received by the grid, which meant that they pushed out 192 more kilowatt hours than that they used. And that's not all of the energy that that system would have produced. That is just the excess energy that they're earning a credit for. Because your energy, first and foremost, will be used by your lights and your appliances and all of those devices that we have powered up in our house, and then it's anything excess that are earning these credits that we're seeing on these bills. So there are several optional pieces that you might want to talk to your installers about, and have them look over with you and see if they're right for you. The first one here that we're going to talk about is called a consumption meter. So whenever you've got your house consumption, that's those lights and appliances and stuff running. And then you've got your solar production, that's the total amount coming off of the roof. You want to be able to have that full picture that shows you, how much of that is actually being pushed out so that you know what your credit should look like. Sometimes systems don't include those automatically. It's just how some of the manufacturers make it. So in this case, you can see this is an aftermarket one. This one was installed outside of having solar. So those little white things that are circled there in the yellow are the consumption meters, and they just fasten right around. They're like a little clamp. They go right around the, power lines coming into the electric panel so that you can see those. And then this is what that monitoring looks like coming off of there. So in this case over here on the bottom left-hand corner, you can see where one of those inverter boxes that you might recognize from before, that's a printer-sized device that's changing the energy from DC to AC. This one has that consumption monitor built in. So just like on that other page where they were clamps, this one is this little gray box down here in the bottom half of that inverter. And so that is a solar edge monitor. And so over here on the right hand side, you can see how that energy balances out and what it looks like. And if you had in phase monitoring, that's just a different brand of those inverters, then it might look like this. Each one of those companies that makes those inverters offers different monitoring apps. So they're going to look different from brand to brand, but they all offer the same type of information where they show how much you're importing, how much you are producing, and then how much you are exporting so that you know what your credits look like. They also show how much you consumed over the course of that same day. So that way you can see, where you're sitting at with what you're producing, what you're consuming, and what you're exporting. It's really good to have a broad picture of all of your energy. Another optional component that I always highly recommend is Critter Guard. On my array, which is a little larger than most, I have a 13.4 kilowatt array on my rooftop. So it's a larger space. It cost me about $700 to put the squirrel guard around all of those. And this is my roof. So you can see the squirrel guard kind of looks like chicken wire. It's like little small metal squares. And it just goes from the edge of the panel down to the roof. If anything, I think it helps it look a little bit better at a distance because it makes that gap that you'd normally have kind of more invisible because it blends the two surfaces together. But appearance aside, it does a very important job. So squirrels and birds are busy little critters. We all know this. Sometimes they're building their nests in, the corner of a light or in the corner of your gutter. It can be a little bit of a problem, but if it's up underneath of your panels, those little squirrels will lay there and they'll build little nests to keep their babies in and to keep their families in and be all cozy, and they're protected from the rain. Seems all friendly and honky dory until they start chewing on those wires. And then you end up with things shorted out. You end up with panel damage. You could end up with a fire because, you've got a breach of the electric system, and we don't want to see that. So we want to keep those squirrels out We want to keep those birds out. We want to make sure that they're not causing any damage. You know, that solar array on your rooftop is going to cost you 20, $30,000 somewhere, and putting a $700 investment around it to make sure that it's fenced in and safe is just a wise choice. It's pennies on the dollar to what you're saving over top of damage being done to either your roof, the panels, or both. Another optional part of this is batteries. So we've all been suffering from, the power going out a little bit more than we probably did 10, 20, 30 years ago. And it's staying off for longer and longer, where it used to be that they'd tell us, hey, we've got a power outage. As soon as the storm stops, the guys will be out there. They're going to fix it. You're going to have power back in 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Now they're like, hey, we know it's Monday, but we're going to see you on Thursday and we're going to get your power fixed. We're going to see you next Tuesday and get your power fixed. And that is a very long time to be without what we consider to be basic resources like our refrigerator and our lights and our air conditioner. So whenever your power goes out for one of those outages, the grid shuts down, obviously, and your batteries are what would let you have power. Your solar would have to shut down because whenever the grid goes down and the solar shuts off, that's a safety mechanism. While we might have feelings about those big investor owned utilities like AEP and Duke, we have different feelings about those linemen who are our neighbors and our friends and our family members. And they're just out there doing a very hard job at a time when the rest of us don't want to be outside in those storms and that high temperature, that low temperature. And they're out there fixing those things. And if there is power that they do not expect, that they are not told about, and it is running through those lines, it's going to toast those guys. And, there's a lot of things I like barbecued in this world, and my linemen aren't any of those. We're going to keep those safe, and we're going to do that by, you know, taking that solar offline whenever the grid goes down. But if you want to have access to your power and you get a battery backup, you're going to have access to it because your system is going to do something called islanding. And that is done through a transfer switch. And so you've got the power is behind the meter and it doesn't escape out. So you won't be getting credits for your excess right then, but you'll be keeping it all behind the meter, all in your house, and being able to access it. So you'll have the solar during the day and be able to run your appliances and your lights and your air conditioning or fans or whatever, and then you'll have battery backup overnight to still have access to that excess generation that you had. Battery backup isn't for everybody. It's really expensive still. You're probably looking at about $1,000 per kilowatt hour, and most of the batteries come in 15 kilowatt hour increments. So you're adding about $15,000 to the price of your system. But if you have frequent power outages or those outages that you are having, even if they're just once a year or for a week at a time, this might be something that's worth it to you or that you want to consider. Maybe you've got critical loads at home. You've got a well pump. I know I grew up with one of those. Or maybe grandma's on oxygen and you don't want her shutting off every time there's a storm. Maybe you want to, do some emergency disaster preparedness. If your area frequently floods and you need to be running that sump pump to get the water out of your basement, or you're worried that, we're going to have a zombie apocalypse and you want to be able to have power and be able to isolate yourself and keep your family safe, we're not here to judge you. We're just here to help you. And we want to make sure that you have the battery storage and the backup power that will be able to do that whenever you're needing that for whatever reason it is. And then in some areas of the country, we're starting to see where the grid will actually pay to help you be able to support it with a battery backup or be paying you to get excess power. Um, we don't have that here in Ohio yet, but we see that in places like Hawaii, where they're trying to take those peaker, those excess power generation plants offline. So they're putting batteries into people's homes that have solar, with the promise that those people will let them have access to the power at certain peak demand times a day. We see those in places like California and Texas, where their energy grids are no longer keeping up with demand, especially during excess heat events and such. And whenever they do that, then they pay them a premium for that power. So there's the potential that if you have excess energy sitting there and you can push it out to the grid, that you could be making some excess savings back during those times. But again, not in Ohio yet, but it's just something to keep in mind that we might see in the future. And if you do have any additional questions beyond what I covered here with you today about battery storage, you can visit solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. And don't worry about writing that down or anything. If you go to our website, there's one of those little magnifying glasses up at the top of the banner, and you can click on that and then type in batteries or backup or storage or, energy resiliency, any number of keywords like that, and it's going to come up with the same guide for you and take you to the right page, so that you can get all of that information that you need. And then the last optional component that we're going to talk about is EV charging. And you're probably thinking, I don't have an EV. I don't think I want an EV. But it doesn't have to be just an EV charger like you see in that top picture. It could be another outlet. So let's say that you have a welder. You might want one of those outlets to have outside of your house or whatever else. Let's say that you have an uncle that visits in his RV and you don't want him to have to come inside and you don't want him to have to go park at some RV park. You could have an outlet outside that you'd be able to use for him. Or maybe you're wanting to add one of those giant electric smokers or another hot tub or, another dryer. Maybe the missus is really into drying all the clothes all at once or having soft, fluffy blankets that are all heated up whenever she puts them on the bed. Whatever the reason is here, let's get you that spare outlet. And the reason that you want to do it while you're doing solar is there's additional installation savings. Whenever you get that tax credit back, they don't look at each individual line of it, they look at the bottom line total cost. So if you add in something like an electric panel update or an EV charger or one of these outlets on the side of your house, you're getting that same 30% savings on that. It lets you future proof your garage or driveway in case you do decide you want an EV down the road. And maybe it's not an electric car, maybe it's an electric tractor. Those zero turn radius mowers are coming in electric, really handy. You don't got to put a tank of gas in your car and haul it around and maybe spill some. You can just have it as an electric mower then. And it also lets you get that purchase pricing for supplies and equipment because that wire is one of the most expensive parts of any installation that you're going to have. And while they're purchasing that giant amount of it to run from your rooftop solar or your ground mount solar to your house, um, it's the same wire that they're going to use to install either the EV charger or the outlet. And they can get you a bulk pricing on that wire then because it doesn't cost them that much more to buy 100 feet than it does to buy them 50 feet. They get a price break. They're going to pass that price break along to you. So get that discount while you can. And with that, we have covered all of our technology. Grab myself a quick little sip of water here, but before we dive into solar economics. So solar is what can be considered a good investment. Back in like 2010, prices were higher on it. The prices have just continued to drop. I don't think that they're going to like keep dropping because, there always has to be a cost of the goods. I think we've reached about where we're going to, stay at, hover at for a little while, but it's a good time to get in on this. Back in the 70s, whenever Carter put solar on the rooftop of the White House, solar cost, 20 plus dollars a kilowatt. It was really or for a watt hour of it, so it was really expensive to put it on those surfaces. And nowadays we see it coming in around 280 to $3 for that same watt of solar. It isn't a specialty or boutique item anymore. Lots of people have solar. You're going to keep seeing it pop up on more and more roofs. I always like to joke that solar is contagious because, like, once one neighbor has it, then other neighbors want it, and it just kind of spreads down a road. It has an excellent return on investment. Usually, people's loan for it is offsetting their power bill. Those amounts will balance or, even exceed in the cases of these folks that are generating a little bit of excess credit each month. And then you have that 30% federal tax credit that's currently available. And if you are listening in and you are a nonprofit or a business, um, make sure that you're, signing up for the right parts of Ready Set Solar. Let us know that you're looking to do it with your nonprofit or business because there are some additional tax credits that may be available to you as a nonprofit or a business. But if you're a resident, know that you've got that 30% base federal tax credit just for your house alone. That tax credit was put in through the Inflation Reduction Act. So it just turned 2 years old. It was a continuation and build out of a credit that had been there that was sunsetting out and was about to be finished. So it took it back up. It was down to like 22% and it took it back up to the 30%, which is great because they gave us another 10 years for people to do that. So that's currently running. It started in 2022 and it's running through 2032. The 2033, we'll see it starting to do that sunset phase out. It'll be down to 26% and in 2034, 22%. And the good news that we're hearing right now, I know that we've got an election this fall, and even if there is an administration change, the full expectation is that we will still see this portion of the federal tax credit in play for a few reasons. Number one, that states like ours here, in Ohio, we have a lot of solar manufacturing. Those are really great jobs, and people want to keep those in place. Not to mention that we have solar installers and some other parts like racking that are built here in the state. So, like our senators and our representatives are all in favor of keeping this tax credit because they want to see those jobs stay. They want to see that manufacturing continue to build out and not shrink back. So they won't be pushing for removal of this credit. And the other thing is that once it's into the IRS tax code, it's a whole lot harder to pull it back out than just saying we want to get rid of this, because the IRS does not like to change the tax code every other day for funsies. So we don't expect this to change. I mean, there's always exceptions to that rule, but we think that this is pretty solidly ingrained into the tax code and into, just people's public expectations of things. And we will continue to see it no matter what happens with the elections. So here's some general pricing and payback time. Now, be fully aware that there's a whole lot of variables here. Your system size, what kind of financing you get, everything else is obviously at play. But we would say that if you're getting that 8 to 10 kilowatt system installed on your house, or in your yard, that you're going to expect to spend somewhere in the ballpark of 20,000 to 30,000, give or take, a little bit. You should be looking at a price somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.70 a watt. If it's way more than that, don't talk to them, get another bid, get another proposal because they're obviously using something they shouldn't be, or they aren't giving you fair pricing. Maybe they're in it for the commissions instead of helping you to get the right solar system. But you want that kind of pricing so that you have a good break even period. Your panels are going to last for 20 to 25 years at least, still producing, up to 80% of their original power output, or they're going to get replaced by the manufacturer. But your break even period then is at 10 to 15 years. And there's some things you can do that like lower that cost if you're offsetting, more of your energy usage. Obviously, that number can lower, or if you're using it for a variety of things, maybe you do have those EVs, maybe you have an all electric home, so you're, offsetting everything with it. Your time period drops down. If you have a very low energy usage home, or you're not offsetting your entire bill, then obviously your time period climbs a little bit. But in either of these cases, as you can tell, 20 to 25 years of those panels making energy is far more than that 10 to 15 years to get you to your break even period. So there are several different types of financing options and loans. You could get a grant through a program like REAP, which is the Rural Energy for America program. We're going to talk more on that in the next slide, so we're going to pass over it right here. But your home equity lines of credit, refinancing to include the solar are some good ways to go. That's using a bank that you already have an established relationship with. They're most likely going to give you your best interest rates and your best offers on that. So they're who I always recommend people go to first. If you don't have a bank that you like, I'm sorry, but I completely understand that. So maybe then you're wanting to look at installer financing. My one cautionary word on this is that they are looking to, use that as a bit of a moneymaker sometimes. So be very aware of those additional finance costs or what the percentage rates are on it, and make sure that they're not passing through to you anything you don't want passed through. Some of the installers are really great and they give you things at, a really fair rate, like getting a zero interest loan on a car at the dealership, and other ones are going to, happily pass through, a 17% finance charge just because they can. So make sure you're really reading through that if you do decide to go with the installer financing. And if you don't have a bank that you want to use, or if you want to see if your bank is giving you a fair rate, one of the groups that I like to recommend is the Clean Energy Credit Union. And so they are an entity that only works in financing things that do clean energy products. So your electric vehicles, solar on rooftops, a wind turbine, geothermal. Maybe, you're looking at getting an e-bike, something little to start out with. Whatever it is, they're your go-to people. It's a very small credit union. They're based in Colorado. They have like 12 to 15 employees at any given time. Really nice folks. I've met them in person. I also have a loan with them. So I'm not going to talk to you about things that I haven't looked into or done myself, because I don't think that's a very, great way to talk to folks about things. So know that whenever I'm saying Clean Energy Credit Union are good people, that they're good people. We financed our F-150 Lightning with them a couple years ago, and they've been really great about checking in on us, letting us know if there was, some new auto loans, if we were looking getting a different car, that they had some different credit rates available and stuff for it. So really, really good at making sure that you're getting the right product and the right, dollars for you and what you're doing with it. So there's some different options for you. And then let's talk a little bit more about that Rural Energy for America program, REAP. So, if you are in a farming community, if you are in a rural area of Ohio, this is a program that could help you out. Even if you're not a farm, but you're in one of those rural designated areas, we can help you look up on the map to see if you are in one of those. You may qualify for this, and it helps businesses, even non-farm related businesses as well as farms. So these are really great grants. They're provided by the government. They will provide up to 50% of the total cost for a solar project. That is capped at $1 million. There's, of course, some paperwork to go with that, but we've got some different resources. We can help you out with finding even a grant writer. Who can apply? Like I was mentioning, farmers, you need to have 50% of your income be coming from your agricultural operations. And then if you're a small business in a rural area. You can learn more at solarunitedneighbors.org/REAP. That's REAP. And then we also have a really great relationship with an organization called Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council, SOPEC for short. They offer REAP assessments in Ohio. They'll come out, they'll help walk you through what your potential project is, they'll help to get you set up with a grant writer and everything else. And that's a free assessment that they offer. They're also a nonprofit with government ties, so they're really good folks for that. And we're always happy to help you get in touch with them. So if REAP is something that you're interested in and it's beyond what we can support you on, know that we're going to be handing you over to some folks that we fully believe in, and want to get you hooked up with. So, and you can always go check out their materials yourself on the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council website. All right, and with that, we have wrapped up all of our financing and solar economics section. And I'm going to take a brief pause here just to say that if you have any questions, if you have been keeping a list as you've been going along, this is the section that's going to help with that. So, Ready Set Solar is a program that we have built out, and we have a national program that runs all the time. It doesn't have quite the same personalized resources as these ones like Southern Ohio will have, where this is all geared for you in that section of our great state. But there's resources out there to help you make wise decisions about going solar, to help you feel supported and to get those questions answered. So if you've got those questions, shoot me an email at ohteam@solarunitedneighbors.org. That address will be, on all kinds of materials that you're going to see here. It's on the last page of this, so you'll have a chance to pause the video and write it down if you're not good at, you know, hearing things and writing them down as we go. But there are folks here that can help you answer your questions. We're also going to have like some interactive groups that you can participate in, so that you can ask questions of other people that are going through this at the same time as you. So, with all of that said, let's dive into what is Ready Set Solar and what does it mean for Southern Ohio. So, local solar benefits everyone. And how does it benefit everyone? Well, first and foremost, it protects you, the future solar owner, from rising energy bills because it helps to lower the cost for not only you, but everyone around you, because there's more energy on the grid that the power company isn't having to pay to produce, isn't having to open up a new factory to make. They're just able to take and use that excess energy that you're generating to help, everybody else get that energy as well. So that's our first one. Second, it reduces the need for expensive centralized generation and grid upgrades, because you're not sending that power very far. Electricity works the same no matter what it is. If it's lightning, it wants to go to the very closest thing that it hits, and it's not going to. Whenever you see a lightning strike, like right in your front yard, somebody 3 miles away does not drop over from that lightning strike. That isn't how it works. And so that's not the way that the solar energy coming off your roof works. It goes to the closest available outlet. So that might be the outlets here in your own home. That might be your neighbor's outlet, even though, that's where the excess generation goes. It doesn't want to go 50 miles away. It's not getting in a big old truck and being hauled across the country. It is going to the closest place. And because of that, it's only working on those distribution lines, those small lines between like a substation and houses. And it's just going to the next closest outlet. So you're not having to pay for those giant ones, those transmission lines that we see like running along highways and stuff, because this is a centralized, this is a centralized system. This is, a localized system. It also makes the energy system more secure, resilient, and reliable. You probably hear some things on the news occasionally that are kind of scary. Hackers could hack our energy system. Or if, somebody who's an enemy to our country decided to bomb one of those power generators, that area is going to be without energy for a while. And whenever we have these distributed energy resources, you'll see DERs listed sometimes. That's a distributed energy resource. Every one of these little tiny solar arrays on our rooftops or in our backyards are those little tiny distributed energy systems. And they are helping to make everything more secure and more resilient and more reliable because the power doesn't have to travel as far. There's less likely to be an interruption in that supply because, they're not going to come for each individual rooftop. They're not going to come for your little tiny array in your backyard. They're coming for those giant generators. And so your little systems are helping to fix those problems and, give us energy freedom as a country that we're producing our own energy in our own yards. It helps to reduce air, water, and climate pollution. No matter what you feel about climate change, we all know that you don't want to stand behind a gas car or next to a gas generator and breathe in those fumes. Even if you don't think that they're dangerous to your health, they're smelly. You don't like them. Whenever you've got solar being produced, I can go sit in the middle of my solar array on my rooftop. I'm not going to smell anything because there's nothing coming off of there. It's zero emissions. It doesn't make, any of that emissions, any of those smells, no matter what. Whenever you've got water, let's go back to that generator again. Whenever you're using that generator outside, it's going to drip a little bit of oil. That's just how they work. It's going to, you might spill a little bit of gasoline. You don't want to drink any of the stuff right around there. So now your groundwater in that one little specific area is contaminated. Guess what? With my solar, it's encapsulated. Nothing's coming off of there. I could go up there and lick my solar panels and be perfectly safe. So your water and your air and your surrounding environment are all going to be free of all of that because of your solar panels. They're not adding any more to our world than than we've already got. It also helps you to grow the local economy with good paying jobs and local investments. Those are not jobs that are, being shipped clear across the country or out of the country. We've got solar manufacturers like Illuminate, big new panel manufacturer here in like the Columbus area, in a little suburb called Pataskala. They have 1,000 people and they're not done hiring yet. They only have like 4 of their 8 lines running. So they're going to be hiring a lot more folks. And all of those folks have benefits. They have, days off and insurance, and they've got really good pay. And they're getting job training to make sure that they are ready to handle that new technology position that they are in. And that is a big investment into that local economy, not just for those people that have that good job, but also for the schools that are getting those tax benefits from those manufacturers coming in. We want to keep building out those jobs. We want those panels to be produced locally. We want that racking to be produced locally. And then we want those local installers, those small mom and pop companies, to be the ones putting it onto your roof and into your yard so that it's everybody that you know. Whenever you go out to the store and you see Bob, you can be like, "Hey, Bob, how's it going?" And he can be like, "Hey, I just got to take a vacation because, I've got that great job at the manufacturer and I made solar panels and then I got a week off." You can be like, "Way to go, Bob. Glad to hear it. I had solar put on my roof. I bet that's some of the panels that you made." And then you're seeing, Joe, the installer, and you're like, "Hey, Joe, how's it going? Have you had more work after my install?" And you're getting to meet these people. They're the guys in your neighborhood, they're the gals in your neighborhood that you interact with and you see, and they're going to put money back into the local economy because they care about it, they live there. And those are some benefits that everybody gets, even people who aren't getting solar, because even if they don't have it on their roof, maybe they work in one of those jobs. So we love being out there and helping with all of those local solar benefits. So Ready Set Solar Southern Ohio is a free program. There's no obligations to move forward after listening to me today. It just helps you simplify the process of going solar. It is again open to both homeowners and small businesses, and that does include small nonprofits across Southern Ohio. There are 35 counties. You probably know if you live in one of them. I mean, let's be honest, we all know what's Southern versus Northern or Central Ohio. So if you think you're in Southern Ohio, go ahead and check that map on our sign up page. But you probably are. For the next 8 weeks, we're going to include you in some information and activities. It's not going to be anything heavy or any big asks. It's going to be little bite-sized chunks that are sent to your inbox each week or are available on that, shared platform forum that we're going to have. There will be personal coaches to help you navigate the entire process. I'll be one of those people. So you're unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you feel about me, going to see more of me around helping you navigate that process. There will also be folks like Chris and Fatima, who are sitting behind the scenes, answering those questions that come into our help desk and offering you, support. We are unbiased and installer neutral. So whenever we're offering you up a list of different installers, those will be location based, as well as they can join that list or not join that list if they choose to. But whenever they sign up for that list, they're just agreeing that they're not going to do any type of weird, aggressive sales tactics. If you tell them, "Hey, I'm done talking to you, get out of my house," they're going to get up and leave. If they don't, feel free to drop me an email. I'd love to hear about that because I'm going to go back to them and go, "What's up? Did you forget about that rule?" But they're going to be your best experts in this because they're going to be the ones that are visiting your house. They're going to be the ones that are installing your neighbor's systems. And so they know what your energy system is like in your area. They know what, it's is going on with things. But we're there to help you look those pieces over and compare them, because I know whenever I went solar, we had like 6 bids. It was super confusing. We couldn't figure out why some of the guys showed little systems and some of the guys showed big systems that were all supposed to fit in the exact same space. Why couldn't they all be somewhat comparable? The pricing was all over the place. And so it was really great whenever we had a resource like this for my own home to sit down and have somebody show me through it. And now I'm, happily one of those people that gets to show people through that. Everything that you're going to hear from us and stuff is tailored to the specifics of Ohio policies and incentives. That net metering that we talked about earlier, it isn't available everywhere. Those federal tax credits, while they are available everywhere, those REAP grants are not. And so, whenever we're talking to you about those, whenever we're guiding you through those are all different things that are available in different places and in different ways in those different places. So, we're there to make sure that you're getting the right information for where you are. And you get support from a network of peers across Ohio. That's not just your Sun staff. That's those other solar homeowners. If you come to one of our, events in person or one of our virtual events that's live, you're going to get to meet some of those other solar homeowners. You might get to know them. Maybe you'll decide you want to volunteer with them. Maybe you're going to think I'm really cool and you want to come hang out with me and table at an event. Love to have you. And that lets you become a part of a support network for other people. So you're hearing from real people. We are launching this program right now. So you're probably listening. It's probably like September or October. This program will launch in September of 2024, and we would love to have you be a part of it. You can sign up anytime between now and December 20th, and you'll get that same information sent to you. You'll be a part of all those same activities. You'll get access to all of that. After December 20th, we're going to shut this part of the program down. We're running it kind of as a sample to see what it's like for our state and how it works. And if we see great results, lots of people that are interested in going, learning about stuff with us, then we might continue it next year or beyond. But for now, we're going to call December 20th our cutoff day. And that way we can keep all of you grouped together and doing things at about the same time. And speaking of those things that you're doing at like the same time, let's talk about some of those solar milestones. So let's say it's right now, I'm looking at it being September of 2024, and that I decide I'm going to sign up. I'm going to start my little classes and I'm going to learn about, what is solar. I'm going to learn about how to decide if my roof is a good fit. I'm going to get that free roof review from the Sun staff and I'm going to look that all over and I'm going to say, you know what, I do want to talk to some installers. I'm going to get that list of installers that's provided to you from us. It's going to be broken down by locations. So it's going to say like Southern Ohio or Cincinnati, Dayton. It's going to say these installers only work in Central or Northern Ohio because, again, unbiased. So we're going to provide you with the whole Ohio list. And you're going to look it over. You're going to decide on at least 3 companies. Okay, listen to me here. 3 companies, not one guy that you think looks great, not 2 guys that you like the logos of, 3 companies. And you want to do that so that you get a good comparison, you get different viewpoints, and you'll get a nice broad picture. You're going to take and have those installers, they're either going to visit you or they're going to present you with a proposal in some way. Some of the guys like to make their initial visits in person. They're going to come out and measure your roof. They're going to look at where it is. Other ones are going to do some of those same measurements using digital tools that they have online. Either way is fine. They have their preferences. You can talk to them about what that is. If you'd rather they all came out, you can just keep calling installers until you find 3 that'll come out. But you're going to get those proposals. You're going to sit there. You're going to look at them. If you don't understand them, give us a call. Team at solarunitedneighbors.org, or you can go search for the word help desk on our website. We're going to help you look those over and make sure that you have the information that you need to compare those against each other. Then you're going to select one of those installers. They're going to design your system. They're going to be in charge of getting you the appropriate permits and making sure that you have what you need to be able to get your, agreements in place and be able to get that solar on your rooftop. The installer will make an appointment to come back out to your home and install it. They're not going to install it the day they visit you to begin with. They're not going to install it whenever they're designing it. That's going to be something that they're going to set probably a month or two out from visiting you, and get that into place on your roof. It might be a little bit longer depending on how busy they are or how long it takes to get the supplies ordered in, but they're going to come back out and do that later. It's going to take 1 to 3 days, depending on the size of your array, to get that installed. For those smaller ones, it's just a day. For a medium sized, larger system like mine, you're looking at, probably 2 days. They did like all of my solar on, the south roof one day, and then they did the east west roof on another day. And then they're going to come back out on the day that your system gets inspected, because they'll send in an inspector from either the state or your municipality or your county. They're going to look at that, make sure everything's ready to go. Then the installer is going to have an approval. And they're going to take that to the utility. The utility is going to turn on your system, and then you're going to learn about that. If you have any questions that the installer doesn't answer and you don't feel like calling them back, because I know sometimes you just want people you're familiar with, feel free to give us a call. That's what our help desk is there for. That's what I'm there for, is to help you answer those questions and get that information later. If it's not something that we can answer for you, we will help you get back in touch with that installer. So just know that we're going to continue to be there. You're going to start saving money on your electricity, and of course, you're going to want to celebrate that next April. Or whenever, if you get your solar installed in 2024, next April, you will be filing it on your taxes. If you get your solar installed in January or beyond, you're going to be looking at April of 2026, because it'll be your 25 taxes. But whatever it is, whenever you're filing your taxes for whatever year it was installed. So if you're filing your 2024 taxes because your solar was installed in this, you're going to get to claim that federal tax credit. That is Form 5695. It's super simple. It's in all those tax programs that we like to use so that we can avoid those accountants. Um, so you can just punch in the numbers yourself. If you do not have the tax liability to be able to take that full lump sum all at once, you are allowed to claim portions of it for up to 5 years. So let's say that you were owed $5,000. You can take $1,000 this year, $1,000 next year, and so forth and so on until you've gotten that whole 5,000. If you don't have the tax liability to get it all, even over the course of the 5 years, unfortunately, it does just kind of disappear and Uncle Sam gets to keep it. But hey, getting back some of it is better than none of it. And then in 25 years, you're going to just still be cranking out clean energy day after day. Your power bills are going to be lower. You're still going to be celebrating and enjoying that solar, even though, you've done this year. So that's the broad milestones of what you're looking at with this process. So if you're ready and interested and you haven't already been to our website, you can visit solarunitedneighbors.org/OHRSS. That is Ohio Ready Set Solar. So OHRSS. You're going to join the program. It's a simple sign up form. Then if you want to, these other steps are optional. Option one, you've got to do where you're not part of our program. Option two is to help promote it. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, tell them about this. Because if you don't want to be ripped off, chances are they don't want to be ripped off, that they also want to know about things. So at the very least, now they've got good education on this, and then they're going to know how to find, a nice vendor that's going to help them out and how to get support if something does go wrong. And if you want to do even more, we have a solar action team here in the state that you can join. It's just a group of volunteers, those yellow shirted people that we saw in that picture on that community solar page. Those folks are just you guys. We pass out those yellow shirts whenever we go to the state house and let everybody be able to fight together for things. That's also the people that you'll see in these pictures, in these yellow shirts. Maybe they're out hanging up door hangers, or maybe they're tabling with us. So those are all of our volunteers, and you can find more information on that at solarunitedneighbors.org/volunteer. And there's a nice scan code there if that's how you prefer to get to your information. You've got a second to pause this, take a picture of it, and go to that link. We're always looking for volunteers to do all kinds of things, from distributing flyers to taking photos. I know whenever I get to an event, I get so busy, I never remember to take photos. So we love to have people come out and do that for us. So there's all different sizes and shapes of things that you can help with. And then if you've stuck with me to now, hopefully you have, and you're hearing this, thank you for doing so. Again, my name is Mariah Williams. I work for Solar United Neighbors of Ohio. I am the Ohio Program Associate. You can reach me or any of my other team members at ohteam@solarunitedneighbors.org. And this is a great page for us to pause on because it does give you the information and you can see that, write it down, drop me a note if you want to and say, hey, I made it through, or hey, I fast forwarded and I just seen this screen at the end. Either way, I'm glad to have you here and I look forward to helping you go solar through our Ready Set Solar Southern Ohio program. Thank you for joining me.